It's the winter, you have an AR, what do you need to do? This was a viewer request, and it was basically like, what should I do to prepare my AR for winter, or winterization of the AR? And I thought it was actually a really good topic. And it just so happens I'm in Minnesota. I have a little bit of expertise and knowledge to speak on this topic. And quite frankly, anytime you have a Minnesotan talking about winter, they probably know what they're talking about. So that's what we're talking about today. My name is Dave Tim from Guns and Tactics. Thank you guys very much for spending a few minutes of your day checking out this video where we're talking about optimizing your AR for cold weather or winter environments. Now, we are outside, and as you can see, it is winter, and it is, yes, real snow. This is not a fake Hollywood effect. Real snow, and this is a reality for me. I've been working outside as a law enforcement officer coming on 19 years now, and ARs, firearms outside is a reality for me. So we're going to talk about some of the things that we can do to our firearm to make it more optimized for winter use, both outside here as well as in the shop. And surprisingly, there are some things that kind of go a long way, not just for winter, but also just general manipulation. So as you can see, I'm wearing a coat, wearing my hat, wearing gloves, and that's where we first started to get into what should I do for my AR. And the first thing that I like to set up is to make sure that my AR works well with gloves, and not just this kind of tactical style glove that I generally wear almost year round, but also some of the other thicker gloves that I'm going to show you when it's actually really cold. Now, a lot of people will talk about like cold, like 20, 30 degrees, 40 degrees. In Minnesota, we could get -10, -20. And when you're sitting out on a perimeter for more than 10 minutes and it's -10, -20, these gloves just won't cut it. I don't care what anybody says, you have to layer up and wear the appropriate clothing, and you want to make sure that you can still manipulate your rifle and your controls with those thicker gloves. So to begin with, I like to first look at a winter trigger guard. This kind of seems obvious, but obviously I want to be able to manipulate the trigger while I'm wearing gloves, and so the material of the glove doesn't get caught underneath the trigger, in between the trigger and the trigger guard. Now, one quick insert about trigger guards is there are several different types of trigger guards available. Obviously, the Magpul ones are very popular, the forward controls one like I have on the rifle, and then there's also this older style which was made by Defensive Edge back in the day, and I'm not sure if it is still in production or not. I believe they may have sold the design to another company. But as you can see, again, it just offers a larger area for a gloved finger to manipulate the trigger. Now, another thing that if I don't mention it, I know other people would, is that if you did still have the mil-spec type, which I highly recommend just getting rid of the mil-spec type, this obviously would just go straight across, but it does have this spring-loaded pin up in the front. You could use a bullet or a pen or a pin punch or something like that to depress this, and then the mil-spec trigger guard actually folds down. Now, when it is folded down in kind of this position, you would then grip it like so, and then you could use a larger gloved mitt or a chopper or something like that. Now, the downside with this is that then in essence you don't have a trigger guard because the trigger guard is pivoted right there. So obviously if you are going to be using this and you're going to be pivoting the trigger guard down, safety manipulation is even more important. And I stress safety manipulation all the time. You always should be manipulating that safety, which is part of the reason why I like the larger ambi safeties, is they are easier to manipulate. But now if we're going to be running around with a rifle with, in essence, no trigger guard, because the trigger guard is folded down for winter use, using and running that safety becomes even more critical. So that's just a quick insert point on trigger guards. Reality is, ditch this and get something nicer on. Now, for all the internet range safety officers out there, we are using dummy rounds. Firearm is unloaded. We've confirmed that before we started recording, so that's what we're going to demo with today. But I want to make sure that I can manipulate all of the firearm controls with my gloves. So mag release, extended or ambi charging handles come in handy with gloves. The extended bolt catch, bolt release. This particular one's a Geisley Maritime. However, the Radian one that's coming out looks really sharp as well. Safeties that I can manipulate all come in very handy, so that way when I have to manipulate the gun, I can do so with my gloves. And that's just some of the basics that works out really, really nice. I want to make sure I can manipulate my light, all the other controls. Again, practice with your gear, with your real gloves. Now, a lot of times what I will do is I will keep this hand in a lightweight glove, and sometimes then I will put my support hand in a thicker glove, especially when it starts to get cold. That way I have the dexterity for trigger manipulation. However, I have extra warmth for this support hand. Now, even with this thicker glove, I can manipulate control. So right now the bolt is locked back to the rear, but if I had to perform a reload, I can insert the mag, I can hit the bolt release, and I can operate the gun. I can charge the gun just fine. I can do all of that with my more winterized glove. Now, if I needed to, I can even grab that heavier duty glove for the primary hand, and I can still manipulate the trigger. Thanks to the winter trigger guard, the material's not getting caught underneath there. I can manipulate safety. If I had to lock the bolt back to the rear, I can do that. I can still do things with these heavier duty gloves. Now, when it really gets cold, I also have a chopper mitt that I will use. And a lot of people are gonna say, well, Dave, that's not tactical. I mean, this, you don't have to blah, 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 blah. I'm telling you, spend more than 10 minutes outside when it's -10, and then come back and talk to me, okay? This is a reality. I can still support the firearm. I can manipulate the light. You can see that there. I can manipulate the bolt catch, bolt release. I can perform a reload, all with this mitt support hand, and yet this is staying a lot warmer. Now, I've looked at some of the mitts that have like the 3 fingers and the trigger finger. Quite frankly, I just haven't found one that works super great for me, so it's not a solution yet, but it is something that I'm hoping sometime may be there, so I can therefore, you know, have a little bit more warmth on this hand as well. But there have been times when I've been on a perimeter where I've had a lightweight glove underneath a mitt, and in the event that it's time to do something, I would just quick pull that mitt off, and then I would have a lighter weight glove underneath the chopper or the mitt. So that's a possibility as well. But even with this setup, kind of geared for more extreme cold, I can do everything that I would need to do. Safety, trigger, clear stoppages, you know, whatever it might be, I can still manipulate the gun with this setup. And it's important to practice. It's important to train taking advantage of your real cold weather gear and manipulating all those controls. So that's kind of some of the stuff I do to the outside of the gun as far as extended control, safety, bolt catch, basically manipulating the light, make sure I have that good dexterity to do so. Again, it all comes with practice and training. So now let's head inside, and I'll show you a little bit about the prep that you do on the inside of your gun. Mainly what I'm talking about when I'm referring to the inside of the rifle is cleaning and lubrication. Now, I think when winter comes, that's a good time for me to take the rifle down and clean it. I'm not gonna get into cleaning in this video. I already have a video on cleaning, which you can find up there in the card, or you can head on over to the webpage and just type in keyword clean your AR-15 or something similar. It should pop up. I am not into white glove level inspections. I just like a functional, effective clean that basically gets the rifle clean to maintain that reliability. So if you're into like scrubbing every little thing, and that's cool, you can do your thing, man. I'm not. I just want to clean it enough to make sure it's clean, it functions fine, and it runs. So generally speaking, beginning of winter is when I do that. Now, as far as lubrication, a lot of people are still stuck in like this, I don't know where it came from. I think it was from an Arctic military manual of like, you have to use graphite and blah, blah, blah. And I'm here to tell you graphite and aluminum generally don't mix. Now, yes, the aluminum is protected by anodizing, so that should protect it from your graphite lube. But the reality is, whenever that manual was written, I don't even know, they probably didn't have the quality lubricants that we have now. So speaking of lubricants, these are just some of the stuff that I had on hand. And generally, my go-to lubricants are pretty much either Slip 2000 EWL or the Geisley Go Juice. And with Slip 2000, it's rated for some ridiculous temperature rating, and I have not been able to test it to verify down to -110. However, I have had it outside in -20, -30 degrees, and it does not freeze. So this is generally my go-to year-round lubricant. The Go Juice does not freeze as well. That's an oil type lubricant. If you're looking for more of a dry film or dry lube, this Ezox is a super thin oil. It's almost basically like water when it pours out. So it's super thin, you wipe it on, and then it dries so it doesn't leave anything wet to the touch, but it kind of dries as like a dry film. I use this a lot of times as like a rust preventative or just a protectant. The fact is, it's a good oil for that. For lubes, I generally prefer more of the oil type lube just so I can see it. I know that the gun's lubricated, things like that, but this Ezox does work really well. It's rated down to like -95, so incredibly effective in cold weather as well. If you prefer more of that really thin, dry film type, I would highly recommend that. But otherwise, lubricate the gun just as you normally would, and I generally recommend lubricated AR is better than a dry AR, so we're going to lubricate the bearing surfaces of the bolt carrier, we're going to lubricate the rings, the cam pin, the charging handle, and you can lubricate a little bit of the friction and contact points in the fire control group. Again, follow the manufacturer's directions for your particular trigger if you have an aftermarket trigger. But don't get into all this like wrapped around the axle of like you got to completely degrease and dry the gun so it has zero lubrication. No, a lubricated gun with quality lube is very reliable in the winter. Again, speaking from experience, and my guns sometimes in a patrol car, it will sit overnight, -20, -30, so everything is completely frozen. I need it to work, and I've tested this, gone to the range, practiced, trained, no issues whatsoever. Now, the only other area to talk about then is the optics. And as far as optics go, obviously you want to be careful so you don't scratch the optics, but I started using cat crap on my RMRs, on my handguns, and I'm going to start using it on some of my optics as well, just to prevent fogging and things like that. There's going to be times when you go from a cold environment to a warm environment, from a warm environment to a cold environment, back, forth, whatever it might be. That's just reality. And the fact that optics can fog is a reality. Now, since I started using cat crap on my RMRs, I have noticed very little of that in the real world. So I'm probably going to start to use that on here. Again, it's just an anti-fogger. Be careful that the lens is not dirty. So when you're putting this product on, that you're not scratching or anything like that. Use a very soft, either a lens cloth, a lens appropriate material, or a super soft swab, and then this cat crap would probably be just fine for you. So that is how I winterize my AR. Again, make sure that the controls, make sure that the function of the AR is, basically set up so it is winter apparel friendly. Get out there and train with your actual gloves. Again, have a variety of gloves. Think about how long you'll actually be outside, how cold it gets in your temperature range, what is reality for you, like what is realistic for you, and then please train with the appropriate gear, the appropriate apparel, and go out there and see what works and see what doesn't. I highly recommend getting out there and practicing. That's where you're really gonna kind of wring out your gear and see what works and what doesn't. Again, lubricate with a quality winter rated lubricant, clean your gun at the beginning of winter, train on, you're gonna be just fine. If you have any other questions, you can go ahead and leave them in the comment section below. Speaking of questions, this episode idea came from our QA series, so if you wanna see your question, get on that QA series, where at the end of the month we answer your questions. Go ahead and send an email to the address shown below, that is theqa@gunsandtactics.com. So if you have questions about this or anything else, again, a lot of times those questions are such good questions that they spawn into their own videos such as this. Thank you guys very much for watching, and have a great day.